for setting on an assassination mission for a big chunk of your life for revenge, to starting a huge chemical warfare plan to end everything. Let's talk about some of the best and the worst villains NCIS has to offer. Starting off with an actual ringleader, Benham Parsa. When you think about him, there's another name that comes up, and that's the Brotherhood of Doubt. Yeah, sounds a bit weird, I know, but essentially, this was a group of terrorists whose main goal was to kill Gibbs and his team. Gibbs and Tobias Fornell then finally learned that the team was a target in season 11 of NCIS. Eventually, they found out that the leader of the group was a man named Benham Parsa, but while they were after Gibbs and his team, they ended up causing so much damage to a lot of people, like they blew up a gala.
Homeland and Metro are on their way. Get everyone out of there, right now!
SIG and teams got hit on the radio frequency. Trace the source.
Oh my god.
Killing several people and leaving Timothy McGee's future wife paralyzed from the waist down. It wasn't until Parsa let himself be caught with the plan to kill Bishop while in custody that the reign of terror finally came to an end. Then you've got a character who had a ton of backstory that kinda resulted in him becoming a villain, aka Sergey. We saw this dude in season 12 of NCIS, and he was an Israeli mercenary. He was very close to another bad guy on the show because he and Arya Swari had the same mother, and if you do the math, this would make them half-brothers. Sergey worked with a lot of terrorist groups, and then he found out that NCIS killed Ari, so he started to watch the NCIS team and slowly made plans to get back at them. For starters, he shot down a helicopter that had both Gibbs and McGee.
Mayday, this is Echo Bravo 9, position 6733 decimals.
Everybody brace for impact!
Losing aft hydraulics.
Thankfully though, they both lived. Then he killed 5 people and set up their bodies so that it looked like Jenny Shepard had been killed. You know, Mishnev wasn't the only one with one hell of a backstory. In fact, there was another character who was literally a trained assassin before he went rogue, and that's none other than Jonas Cobb. He was a former US sailor who worked with Director Vance on a CIA operation called Frankenstein. This was a program to help the person change their behavior so they could stay calm no matter what. Cobb was successful and finished his first job as an assassin for the CIA, but he broke and went missing for a while. Okay, we all know this could go both ways. He either decides to go work on a farm or decides to utilize some newly found evilness inside of him. Sadly, the latter ended up happening because he came back later and became a serial killer. Cobb also became well known because he killed Mike Franks in front of Gibbs's house. Speaking of well-known villains, there were definitely some villains who went all out every single time he did something even remotely bad, and Mamoon Sharif takes the lead for that. Sharif first showed up in the season 4 episode Sandblast, which began with an explosion on the golf course that killed a lieutenant colonel. But what bothered Gibbs the most was that Sharif was a CIA informant and had gotten away by the end of the episode. By the time he came back later in the season, he was planning to use BZ gas, a poison gas, to do chemical warfare on the whole city. He planned to spread the poison with $1 bills, and when Gibbs gets poisoned, he keeps having hallucinations and is so close to dying that Hollis Man has to save him. While some of these villains were relatively short-lived, we did have a main bad guy in several seasons of NCIS. Not only was La Grenouille just that, but he was also the main enemy of the late NCIS director, Jenny Shepard. In the show, Jenny thinks he killed her father, Colonel Jasper Shepard, because he sells weapons in France. He was also a lot more dangerous than any of us anticipated because of how his death affected the team. A lot of people started pointing fingers at Jenny for potentially being the one behind Le Grenouille's death, and that would be even more distressing considering the fact that Le Grenouille didn't even kill Jenny's dad at the end of the day. Still though, not gonna lie, he was both one of the most dangerous bad guys on NCIS and one of the most complicated. I don't know what's worse, complicated individuals or a complicated pair of siblings, because because Paloma Reynosa and Alejandro Rivera definitely brought a new twist to the world of evil. Reynosa and Rivera had a lot of reasons to want Gibbs dead because of how close they were to the NCIS. This pair made this list because of how they were involved. To put it simply, Reynosa's dad, Pedro Hernandez, sold drugs. He was also the one who killed Gibbs's wife and daughter. This made Gibbs want to get even with Pedro, and obviously by doing that, he also ended up making the two children super angry. So Paloma tried to kill Gibbs's father so she could get back at him.
You're just like your son.
No, ma'am. He's just like me.
How confident are you, Mr. Gibbs?
He's raised on the farm.
But what actually ended up happening was much worse for the two. She and her brother Alejandro were led to a house, where Alejandro accidentally killed his sister because he didn't know she was inside. Alejandro went to prison and tried to kill Gibbs with his reach again to get revenge for his father's death, but he failed 4 times. And while that was weird, some villains in this list don't just outwardly do the most bizarre and dangerous things they can think of. Instead, some of them stay quiet, while people they've hurt ruin their own selves, and Trent Court is one of them. Court was a British citizen who worked for the CIA, but then he betrayed the US and made life hard for the NCIS team. Make no mistake, his bad behavior goes back a long time. Remember Jenny Shepard's father, who we were just talking about a few minutes ago? Well, he was the one who killed him, not Le Grenot, and maybe that makes him even worse of a dude. It's because of him that Jenny might have killed Le Grenot for a crime he never did. And the list of evil things doesn't just stop there. He also set a car bomb to kill Dinozzo, but it killed Le Grenot instead. He came back and killed Thomas Morrow, who had been the head of NCIS before Jenny, and he also tried to kill Fornell. Not to mention, he's also the person who bombed the David farm, trying to kill Ziva and get Mossad director Eli David. It's one thing to be a villain in your own right, then it's another thing to set such a good example as a villain that you end up influencing other bad people in the future. Well, Ari Hazwari has that kind of effect on the show. I think it wasn't until season 2 of NCIS that we all realized that anything could happen on the show. And it started with Ari Hazwari shooting Caitlin Todd in the head in the season finale.
Sorry, Caitlin.
Killing the NCIS agent in front of Gibbs and Dinozzo. In season 2, Ari was basically the main bad guy. This went on into season 3, where a Mossad agent named Ziva David took over. Ziva was Ari's sister, and she was helping NCIS find her brother. I think we can all agree he changed NCIS for good when he killed Caitlin.
Wow. I thought I'd die before I ever heard comedy.
He also ended up influencing future bad guys, especially Sergey and Sahar. And that, folks, was my ranking for the best and worst NCIS villains. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.